Well, I probably spent most of my childhood in this theatre. It's sort of always like coming home when I come through the doors. Mum was here in rep, so from a very early age, just from a little girl, I kind of grew up backstage and in the wings, watching everything going on and taking it all in. I can remember one weird story I've always remembered, and I don't know if Mum even remembers this. I was just started in comprehensive school, and I was going on my first date, and my mum was petrified now because I was going with a boy to the cinema, and I went, and it was okay, and he was all right, nothing, didn't really like him that much. Came back, and I came back into the theatre to tell Mum all about it, and every single member of the cast was lining up the old stairs there, waiting to hear as well with bated breath. It was like the most exciting thing ever. Mortified. But wonderful stories. I think probably it was easier looking back now. Childcare, really. It was easier for Mum to have me here than anywhere else. And I loved coming. The people I met, the characters, the stories. I just loved it. The smell as you walk backstage, everything. I just remember it vividly. Even now when I walk in, I can smell it. And it's just special. Very special place. I remember Mum's first panto was Dick Whittington, and it was one of those times where don't meet your hero, but I did, and I was so excited. I'd grown up, I loved watching the Monkees on TV. It was a TV show, and of course the main guy, Davy Jones, was British and was doing panto with my mum, so I thought she'd really arrived now because she was with Davy Jones. And I can remember he got married in Swansea, of all places, at the registry office here, and didn't have a bridesmaid, and I'd not long been a bridesmaid for a family member, and I had a dress, so basically I was rent a bridesmaid, and my dreams came true, and I was Davy Jones's bridesmaid, so I've never forgotten that. Yes, I was quite little, so I didn't know John Chilvers that well, other than he was just this nice old man. Perhaps I shouldn't say that, but he was an older man, and he was quite sweet to me as well. And I can remember Mum telling me a story about when they went on tour, because some of the plays used to start at the Grand and then go off on tour. And she'd drive, and then John would sort of be co-pilot next to her, and he didn't know his left from his right, and so she'd be saying, "Which way now, John? Which way?" And he'd say, "Your way," or "My way," and that was his way of saying left or right. So it would be her way or my way. So I've always remembered that, and my son's the same a little bit, so we kind of do the same as well. Your way or my way. My first time in Swansea Grand on the stage I was actually 15, and they were doing a production of Cabaret, and they wanted to fill the Kit Kat Club basically. So they got a load of local good amateurs in, and I was, again, Mum said, "Do you want to do it?" And I said I'd love to, so I was brought in to do that, and that was my earliest memory, and it was the time when the Grand was being converted basically. The building we're in now was the old bus depot, and it was being all changed around, so we were actually in the dressing rooms with porter cabins. I always remember that, but it was a wonderful show, and bit of a life changer for me, because I met so many wonderful people in the cast that I'm still quite friendly with now, ironically. Jill Nalder, friendly with, or Noah through mutual friends still. Graham Cole was the first time I kind of met him, really, and of course Mum was in it as well as Fräulein Schneider, and I had a wonderful time. So that was my first time in a sort of professional production. I then decided to rebel and went to art college, and decided that it wasn't for me, as everyone assumed I'd probably go into drama, and I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. So I went to art college, and then I started singing in art college, singing in a band. And inevitably then when I came back after art college, came back to Swansea for a while and started joining amateur groups and singing. And Mum came to see me in a concert, and Frank Vickery came. And it was all sort of West End shows. I think I was singing Les Mis, all songs from the shows. And I can remember Frank Vickery coming up to me later after, and he said, "Love, put away the pencil and come and work for me." And that's how it happened for me. I was sort of mid-20s. And it was a similar sort of thing as Mum. I had to sort of work 40 weeks as an ASM to get my equity card, so the golden ticket. And my first play was Breaking the String with Lynn Hunter, myself, Frank, and another chap who I can't remember his name now. But that was my first sort of professional proper production, I suppose. and a play. And we came here. We actually came to the Grand on tour. So that was just wonderful, because I thought I'd finally got back and performed on the stage I'd been on the other side of all my life. So, of course, touring then with Frank, which I did for a good few years, really, it was just wonderful to come back to Swansea Grand. You know, other theatres were lovely to go to, but there was something special about Swansea Grand. And he had a big following in Swansea, and absolutely packed to the rafters. You know, matinee every single night. You always knew you were in for a good night, a good laugh, and he'd pack it in. Full audiences every night. It was just wonderful. I think one of the next ones I did then was family planning, and Mum was in that as well, and that's where he's Gran in the bed for the whole 2 hours, including the interval. And a lot of our family quotes have come from that one play. So yeah, it was a sort of pivotal part of my life, really, the early sort of time and my sort of learning curve, really, for comedy and sort of learning the craft, because he directed as well in those days as well, learning how to do the comedy timing and wait for the laugh, and it was just a lovely time, happy time. So Mum and I were asked to do a St David's Day concert in the newly opening Dragon Hotel in Swansea. Mum was going to do a piece, I was going to sing, and we met this lady there, Lynn Mackay, who was a real tour de force straight away. And by the end of the night, the audience had gone. We were around the piano having a real sing-along and a bit of fun, really. It was a lovely end of an evening. And we sort of gave this sort of throwaway comment, as if to say, go on then, write us a musical. We'd had a few glasses of wine by now. Well, within a couple of days, I had a text, and she said to me, I've written the first half. I said, sorry? I've written the first half. Do you want to see it? Or do you want to come over and listen to some of the songs? And she literally had. So it kind of went from there, and I thought, this is good. This is actually really good stuff. So we did Swansea Girls first, 4 of us, four-hander. So it was myself, my mum, and Lynn was in it as well, and another lovely young girl, Sophie. And we did this musical, Swansea Girls. And it just snowballed, and we had a packed audience, and I can always remember this spine-tingling moment that every actor loves and dreams of. We took the curtain call. It had gone down really well. We knew they were enjoying it, and we turned to face the back, and there was a projection of a swan flying off to the horizon, and we all 4 of us turned around at the same time, and we looked, and it was that one moment, and I can remember Mum going, oh my God. Every single person was standing, including the gods. It was just the most sort of shuddering moment of my life, really, because it was just wonderful. Took your breath away moment. From that, then I said, you can't stop now, Lynn. You have to do another one. And then the year later, we did Swansea Women, and I said, let me produce it for you. I want to have a go. So I think I had £137 in the bank, and we did a £35,000 music. How I did it. Cheek alone, I think, and we all came away paid and in profit, so I was so chuffed at that. But in that performance, there were 3 generations. Again, it was easier for childcare. I dragged my son in, so it was history repeating itself. He joined us, he played my son, I was the mother, and then my mum played the grandmother, and it was just a wonderful moment, never to be repeated, really, where the 3 of us were on stage together. I think he retired not long after, though. Always growing up here, I always come to the theatre, in the rep especially, and sometimes on a Saturday afternoon it'd be quite quiet, so they'd shut the circle, but it was the Elephant Man, and I remember it. I was fascinated by it, and I used to wanted to see it all the time, and I can remember saying, can I come and see the matinee? And they said, well, look, slip upstairs and you can watch it all up there by yourself. You can have the whole upstairs to yourself. I thought, oh, this is wonderful, I'm really special now. And I can remember I sat there, and I decided to sit at the back, because that's where I'd always sat with my mum and dad in other times. And I sat sort of in the middle, and I was fascinated watching the Elephant Man. I know in the corner of my eye, I could hear this noise, and I thought, oh, somebody's come to join me, and I didn't look. And then after a while, I sort of looked across, and when the end chair was creaking, and I literally saw it move, and the seat was brought down, and I just had this eerie feeling that someone else had come to join me to see the matinee as well. Never ever forgotten that. And even now, I will look at that chair, and sort of give a little smile as I pass it. One of the most enjoyable plays I did was one we did, I think it was 2018 now, I want to say, and it was a play called Granton Street, and it was written by Philip Burton, who was Richard Burton's mentor, and it was an undiscovered play, and a lady called Angela John rediscovered the play and thought it sort of had this sort of feeling of how green is my valley and all those, but it had never been done, ever. So she brought it to Fluellen Theatre Company and said, would you do it? And we did. And then we did a little tour, and it's sort of got quite good critical acclaim. So we're actually bringing it back and doing it again, finally, because of the pandemic, we couldn't do it again sooner. But we are actually doing it again this autumn, and doing the sequel as well, called White Collar. So I'll be able to resurrect my role of Mrs. Davis all over again, who was a lovely, lovely character, quite warm, and I just love comedy, and I always try to seek out the comedy in everything, even if there isn't any sometimes. But it's nice to add a little bit of a lighter touch when the subjects are quite powerful. So yes, I'm looking forward to coming back in the autumn and treading the boards again in this wonderful building. Over the years, I've done some a bit of producing as well, which in smaller forms is great. But in the one big production I did here was Swansea Women, and it was a wonderful experience. But when I look back at my younger self, 10, 15 years ago, whatever it was, I don't know how I did it, because it's sort of so all-time consuming. You know, you've got a zero budget, and you've got to put a musical on. Everyone needs to be paid, because they were all professional. A set has got to be built, paid for. There's just so much to think about. I don't think I slept for months. And I can remember my son saying to me, "Mummy, are you going to be a producer again?" I thought, I've obviously neglected him as well. But it was the opening night, I can remember, because as well as producing, I was in it. So I can remember coming off at the end of the show, and I just could not stop crying. But I think it wasn't sort of about being dramatic. I was just relief, as if, oh my God, we've actually done this. From having £100 in the bank grant from the Welfare Trust in Forest Park to putting on a show which cost about 35 grand, and we did it, and we still came out with profit. So I was quite chuffed about that. But it was a lesson learned that I'll probably never do it again, because it's put years on me. Probably why I now dye my hair. But it was an enjoyable experience, well worth it, and I'll leave it there. The Grand always has a special place. You know, I started my young life here, then I did my first professional productions here, and in last few years, really, last 10 years or so, I've started performing plays here in this space, in the studio theatre. So I think there's a future for the Grand. I think it's got such a niche market, and long may it continue, really. I think with the new arena opening, I think that's got its place, but I think the Grand still has a special place for many in people of Swansea, and I just hope it goes from strength to strength.